This called meeting of the Knox County Commission Audit Committee will come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Joe Carcello, David Shields, Amy Boyle, Dave Wright,
Here.
Mike Brown.
Here.
3 members present.
3 members present. We have a quorum. I would ask that all stand, please, and give proper courtesy to our country's flag and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I think that gets us off to a good start. Thanks. I want to thank everyone for coming out today to talk about the Audit Committee's called meeting, which has on it 2 agenda items. We will now approve the agenda. There will be a motion that the agenda. Is there a second? Is there discussion of the agenda? There are 2 items. With no further discussion, properly moved and seconded, the agenda is set. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The agenda is set. Madam Clerk, please read the first item.
It's item number 2, direct the Knox County Internal Auditor to commence the audit of the Knox County Schools Nutrition Program.
Do I hear a motion? Do I hear a second? We have discussion.
Well, just as a matter of record, this should not have had to be on our agenda today, because we could have approved this at last month's commission meeting without having to go back, because the commission can set the scope of an audit. So just as a reminder, call for the question.
Right. Continuing discussion for just a second. I believe it was at the request of the internal auditor to make sure that everything was square with the audit committee, with the commission. I know that this particular item's been before us since appearing in the media for weeks. I believe there has been progress made on this already, right? Madam Internal Auditor?
Yes, we, in anticipation of commencing this, we've been speaking with the schools on exactly what's kind of been going on in their nutrition program, getting some background information, so that when we got to this meeting that we could start and jump on it as fast as possible, so we can do some of the behind the scenes stuff to get ready for the actual audit kickoff.
Okay. Yes.
Can I rephrase the motion?
Are you going to offer a substitute motion?
Well, let me do it that way then. This is a motion that the Knox County Audit Committee authorizes the internal auditor to conduct a performance audit with a financial risk assessment of the school nutrition program. The scope of the audit and financial risk assessment shall be developed solely by the internal auditor.
Is that agreeable to the second?
Yes.
The motion properly being before us and seconded, if there be no further discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Like sign. Hearing none, the motion is carried. Item number 2, and before this one is read into the record, let me back up and say the first item that we've done is sort of housekeeping. The second item that we're doing is something that is just being initiated, and I know there are 3 other commissioners here who are welcome to comment. They're not voting members of this committee, but if they have input or questions or want clarification, please feel free to take part in the discussion. The same applies to other members of the citizenry of Knox County. If there's someone here that would like to ask a question or raise an item in discussion, I would ask for your name and address, and you would have a few minutes to address this committee. So, having said that, the second item on the agenda, Madam Clerk.
Is a discussion and possible vote on recommendation for the internal auditor to commence an audit of the Knox County Schools' use of credit cards.
Do I have Yes, Commissioner Brown?
I have a motion in that regard, if you would like me to read it. Move that the Knox County Audit Committee recommends to the Knox County Commission that the action of the internal auditor in commencing a performance audit of the Knox County Schools credit card program be ratified, and in proceeding with the audit, the extent and scope shall be developed by the internal auditor. Further move that should the internal auditor deem it necessary to conduct an audit of the Knox County Schools purchasing program and its travel expenditures, that she be so authorized.
Do I hear a second?
I've got to talk about discussion.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Now we discuss.
In the last week's board meeting, the school board, again, kind of after the barn door, shut the barn door after the horse got out, voted to have a 5-year audit of the P cards or the credit cards, which was, according to this paper, unanimously passed. We have already authorized our auditor, internal auditor, to do this. I've talked to her, and I've also talked to Mr. Elmore from Pew, and if he would like to come forward and make any comments in this regard, in this discussion. We feel that possibly they've asked for a 5-year, but we're thinking that a 2-year to start, and then if we find anything further, we can go back. So, Mr. Elmore, you have anything you want to add to that?
Name and address for the record, please, sir.
Larry Elmore, 1634 Windsor Hill Road, Knoxville. I'm a vice president of Pew CPAs. Yes, I agree with that approach. I think 5 years would be a little much if you would take the first 2 years, or you can take 2, 3, whatever number you want to pick. You can take the first year, go 18 months. I think the 2-year period is a good suggestion to go with. If you don't find anything in that 2 years that bothers you, that would warrant going further, or if you only find in that 2 years what we know already has occurred, then you can stop. If you find more than you expected, then you go back to 3 years, 4 years, and keep going back to the maximum of 5. I would applaud your effort to give Andrea flexibility. There's no way to approach this with a rigid approach that you know that you don't have flexibility, because as any good auditor knows, the element of surprise is what you need more than anything in an audit. And the process that we've had where she's had to go back and forth to get various approvals, the element of surprise went away a long time ago. So I think at this point, you go to 2 years and keep going back till you get satisfied that there's not further need to go back.
2 comments, well, 1 question and a comment. If you did it as an outside firm, I mean, I know you're trying to wrap up this county and the schools right now, and you're pretty well tied up. If your firm did it, what would we be looking at in cost, approximately?
Well, it depends on what you tell us to do, because there are some questions. That's why I would encourage you to let Andrea have some flexibility. You know, do you just want the 6 credit cards looked at? Do you want to extend it also to the P cards? Do you want to go to the Sam's cards? Do you want to go to the pilot cards? You've got all kinds of cards out there. So I think the motion at this point says just a generic label called credit cards. So I think you need to refine that suggestion first, or that motion. If you're only going to look at those 6 credit cards, you're going to have 24 statements that you're going to look at just in the scope method first, and you pick things that look out of line, or things that look excessive, or things that look unusual. You could probably just do those 6 within a week or 2. But if you open it up to all the Sam's cards, all the gas cards, and all that, there are hundreds of those. It could be forever. There are, if I'm not mistaken, Chris, 178 cards that are P cards. Countywide, yeah. Not just in the schools, but there's a bunch of them.
Well, I would assume when we talk about credit cards, it would be in general, and anything that they're charging, and coming back later, and sometimes later than pay it. That would be my assumption. Ms. Andrea, what is your thought on it?
If it's just a generic term, a credit card, and we just say in the scoping that it's any card that would be used to purchase something in advance and pay for it later, would that work, Larry? As long as it doesn't specifically state that it's those 6 credit cards, that it's any type of credit type arrangement that the schools might have.
So you're not just limited to these 6 cards then?
No, not if we just make it very general.
Then it needs to be general.
Any type of credit.
Well, here again, you can start with the 6 and say, based on what she finds there, that she
Yeah.
has the option to go further.
Well, she has that in this motion that she can develop that scope, which I think that would include that, wouldn't you? I mean, kind of pay as you go.
Yeah, I really would hate to see her have to come back to either you or full council to get approval to go from the 6 to the rest of them.
Right.
Okay, so we have the general understanding then here on the audit committee that what we're proposing be looked at be anything that can be viewed as being purchases on credit. Commissioner Owenby had his light on. He is not, okay. Mr. Shields.
One thing I want to make sure too that we look at is not necessarily limited to what has happened, but the process. How did it happen? What are the controls in place? Are we at risk at other areas as well? Do we have any plan at the time to look at that? The line of approvals that should have been in place to identify some of this in the beginning. You always want to be preventive rather than detecting it after the fact.
And as a general statement, I think that's the purpose of having the audit, to make sure that the risk is identified and the controls are in place.
Right. Well, it wouldn't be just about the transactional part of it. The tricky part is that the schools have said they're going away from their own credit cards and going into using the county's travel cards, and they're not going to have those credit cards anymore. So some of the recommendations, if we limit it just to those 6 credit cards, wouldn't be of a lot of value, because our recommendation would probably be, hey, go under the county travel policy. So since they're removing that process from them, we can, the recommendation piece, going through the process and what's wrong and what didn't work for the process isn't as much value now, because they've decided to remove that piece. We can look hindsight, but as far as preventing this in the future, we're not going to have that for those travel.
But based on what you find in those, there could, even though they've switched over now, there could be some serious reprimands for what's been going on the last couple of years. I mean, I think that's what the county people want to know. You know, what's been going on? We're putting tax dollars in this. You know, 2/3 of every dollar that I give the county goes to schools. And if they're just blowing it on this and that, then, you know, we need to make some serious changes.
This would give a clearer picture of what the cards were used for and how they were used.
Well, another thing too, well, go ahead and vote on this.
No, I still have a light on.
Okay.
Commissioner Oynby? Commissioner Oynby notes that he's not a voting member, but my invitation is to everyone that has comment.
Okay, thank you, sir. I guess my question is to Mr. Pugh. I read that you all were not aware of these credit cards during your audit. Is that correct?
Well, these 6 cards were cards held by persons at the school system. And the way that process was working was the payables, the schools had a separate account payable department. These credit card statements were submitted to their AP department to get approved, processed, then they got sent to the county finance to get paid. So they would have fallen into our review process or our testing process of thousands of other transactions that we would select for a sample to test. But we'd never zeroed in on these as specific tests like we're talking about doing now.
Yeah.
Because anytime you do an audit, it's a sample of thousands of transactions. Now, one thing I would say is that you take a good, strong look, and maybe we're doing that now. Chris can answer this. I don't know why we have 2 payable departments, one at the schools and one at the county. If we're going to run these cards through or any transactions through, you don't need approvals twice, once there and once over here. Because once it comes to the county for payment, if the approvals have all been given over at the schools by the supervisor there, they're not going to verify everything again unless there's something missing. So I think there needs to be a good, strong look at either combining those processes or eliminating one or the other to streamline that, because it seems a little bit excessive.
I think what we've seen by having the 2 different departments approve over here, then transferring over here for approval, is why we have the late payments that are occurring, and I've still got questions of why our tax exempt status wasn't used, and we're paying taxes on a lot of these transactions. Some of these late fees and taxes equated to more than what the transaction was. And by having the 2 departments, I think that's what you end up having. There is going to be a delay of 2, maybe 3 months before these are paid. And it almost, in the public's eyes, it almost looks like by having this, they weren't looked at as far as the credit cards. And that goes on to having the scope of her looking at every credit card over there, not just these 6, but to look at the gas cards, to look at this, all these other credit cards, the Sam's cards and all this, and that there is a process that has to be in place to make sure that everybody's making the proper purchases and they're purchasing what they're using the tax exempt numbers when they make purchases, that they're not purchasing food or on travel or airline tickets or car rentals and all that stuff. I mean, we use ours over here on the county side. You know, one person makes our purchases for our airlines and our travel, but we get reimbursed for our food. And that's the way it should work. At least it's more accountable that way, and there's a process. But that would be my only suggestion to the audit committee, is that we generalize this so that she's not cornered to just these 6, because there could be misuse in other credit cards as well. So.
And to expand a little bit on your question, Andrea and I have talked just even as recently as this morning, and we had Chris in the conversation too about ways to improve and expand on the internal audit function here in the county. I'd like to see you become more of a proactive review of transactions as they occur, as opposed to looking at things after they've happened. And we were talking this morning about potentially using software to review transactions that are exceptions or outliers or things that look unusual, where the internal audit staff would come in every morning and look at the exception reports, and if they see something unusual, they go right in and look and see what happened, as opposed to it coming out in the newspaper and the whole world knowing about it and what they're going to go do. So that's what I'm talking about, the element of surprise. Anytime you have internal audit where the program is approved at the front of the year and everybody knows what you're going to do all year long, there's no surprise function to that. So there's all kinds of things that we're talking about that in order to do that, it's going to take more staff and more software capabilities with the internal audit department. So, but it's money then and money now or money later to look into problems that come up.
To bear out what
Commissioner Brown, do you have additional questions for Mr. Elmore?
I got something to add.
Add something.
To bear out what he just said, Mr. Dickel was put on paid leave on September 11th. We were notified on October 16th. Now, state law says that the school board must notify the commission and the state immediately whenever they find something of this nature. So I think that's something we need to maybe discuss the commission, pass on and ask the commission to discuss. And if we have to make a specific request for them to follow the law or whatever.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. You keep that note. I attended the Board of Education meeting the other night, and I know they had quite a in-depth or long, lengthy discussion about trying to get to where they are right now, and saying that they are requesting that this audit be performed into some specificity. I'd like to recognize Board of Education member John Fugit. Were you wanting to make a comment, sir?
Yes, please.
Please step to the. Give your name and address for the record, please.
John Fugit, 5118 Stokely Road, Knoxville, Tennessee. As a representative of the board and as a taxpayer, I understand the issues that you all have been discussing, and I'm not here to tell you all how to run the business after this audit has been conducted. That's up to you all. But as a member of the school board, we have found that we've had a problem in the school board with money issues. There seems to be an environment of where the financial issues are not really being paid close attention to. So that was one of the reasons that we voted to have an outside audit on this. We specified credit cards. If there's the 6, then we should audit the 6. If there's more than that, then we should audit them. I feel like that going back 5 years, that you can look at a pattern, and if it says 6 credit cards for a week, for 2 years, it's not going to be much more time spent auditing those credit cards. There is some liability here on the people who have abused the credit cards. There is, and this is something that we need to get to the bottom of. As a taxpayer and as a member, a body of the Legislative Committee of Knox County, we need to find out what's going on. I think that it would be best served that if we let an outside auditor look at this. This takes the liability off of the legislative body and everyone involved that is part of the county, Elm County payroll. So my recommendation is to look at this audit, let the Pew & Company look at this audit, do a forensic audit. That way it is open, everyone knows what's going on, and there's no doubts to be cast about it. We're well aware of what's going on, and that's what I'd like to say, and thank you all for letting me address you.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Is there anyone else that was wanting to make comment to this issue? If not, we have before us a motion properly second to send to commission. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
Question. Mr. Law Director, we're talking about couple of cases in point here, but suppose that 3 months from now that suddenly there's a problem in whatever department. We got to jump through the hoops, or can we authorize, once we're notified, authorize Andrew to immediately start on it?
The way this motion is drafted, she has this very broad, she can follow little trails if she needs to, doesn't have to come back before this board or commission.
I just want to get that was clear to everybody.
The audit, I was going to make an announcement. You going to make an announcement?
I got a couple of questions for Ms. Andrew. Okay. Can you give for this committee and for the commission a breakdown for the last year of all expenses for travel and lodging for Knox County schools and board members?
As part of the audit?
No, that's as a separate.
I thought you meant, can I do it right now?
No. And maybe, okay, go ahead. Your response.
If, as part of the information I obtained during the audit process,
I don't think you have to make it that. I mean, that should be open records as far as that's concerned. But for these two, the audit committee and the commission's benefit, I think it'd be beneficial if we had those figures.
Commissioner Brown, you and I can't talk about it for the next 30 minutes, but maybe in the work session, it might be proper and appropriate for us to discuss it further, and there may be representatives of Board of Education at the work session meeting, and we can ask them for that information. But that's,
okay.
we can carry that discussion to full commission here in a half hour, okay? Do you have another question? Number 2. Go ahead.
No, I'll forego it.
No. The announcement that I was going to make is that I believe it's November the 25th, the audit committee meets, is that correct? November the 25th, a Tuesday. I just want to make people aware of that, so that this is a continuing, it's not something that will be handled last week or today or next week. The audit committee meets the 25th. And I believe at that particular meeting we will have the first time the discussion of the audit that we call the audit of the PPU. That will be the first time that the results of that audit will be before the audit committee.
Well, back to my question there. For her to get it for the audit committee, I suppose the audit committee needs to ask the commission to have her get it for us. So if so, I'll make a motion that she get those figures.
Our agenda, we don't have enough people here to amend the agenda. That's why I'm saying we could discuss it in front of full commission in a half hour. That'd be okay?
If you say so. I need
If there be no other questions or comments or announcements, the meeting of the audit committee is adjourned.